The Jared Dillian Show.
I'm Jared Dillian. This is The Jared Dillian Show. Friday night. And after the show, I'm going to go out and get a steak. I am going to delete a steak. I look forward to talking with you about your money. Please call 844-305-7800. That's 844-305-7800. This is The Jared Dillian Show. I'm talking about a 16-ounce New York strip rare. Not medium rare, but rare. Rare steak. If you want to go to my website, it's jareddillianmoney.com, or you can follow me on Twitter at DailyDirtNet. And we're going to kick things off tonight with something totally different, way off the reservation. A very just unique topic. None of you are expecting this. We're going to talk about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in general. And if you go back to January of 2018, Bitcoin peaked at $19,000 a coin in an orgy of speculation. Just massive amounts of speculation. You had Coin Daddy and Bitcoin Jesus and like people buying Bitcoin on credit cards. I mean, it was a frenzy. It was everywhere. I think 50 Cent was kind of involved in that too. I can't really remember. And at the time, I was telling everybody, I was writing articles about how this is the stupidest thing ever. And I made a lot of enemies in the Bitcoin community because I was out there vocally, loudly admonishing these people for, whipping up this speculation, which, by the way, was sucking in a lot of people, a lot of innocent people, a lot of investors who didn't really know what they were doing, but they got sucked into this frenzy, and they put a lot of money into this that they couldn't afford to lose, and they lost it. Because the price of Bitcoin went from 19,000 to 3,000, between 3 and 4. And and that is what you call a bear market. And like I said, Bitcoin, the reason I hated it is because it was a cult, and you had these people called HODLers, HODL. So HODL, and the reason somewhere along the line, somebody had a typo, and instead of writing hold Bitcoin, they wrote HODL, so then it just became like an inside joke, and they called themselves HODLers, but also it was an acronym, and the acronym stands for Hang On for Dear Life. And Bitcoin was a cult, and the reason it was a cult is because these guys were out there all the time, and they said they would never sell no matter what. They would never sell. Well, guess what? It went down 80%, and a lot of them did sell because they couldn't take the drawdown. Now, there were people that hung on, and Bitcoin today is at about 10,000, so it's about halfway back. And it's Bitcoin at this particular point in time is interesting for a lot of reasons, but it's still a bit of a cult. And I will say that I have met a lot of really interesting and important people in the crypto world in my career. There's actually a publicly traded cryptocurrency miner. It's called Hive, and Hive is listed on the Toronto Exchange in Canada. It's a publicly traded Bitcoin miner, and it's run by a guy named, there's two people in. It's one named Frank Holmes, who was at U.S. Global Investors in Texas, and there's another young guy named Marco Strang. It's those two, and we'll get to this in a second about how mining works, but basically their mining operations are in Iceland, and we'll talk about why in a second. So I know those guys, and I know some other miners. I mean, it's just like I know some pretty important people in the community, and I was just this Bitcoin skeptic for a long time. And the reason I was a skeptic is I just don't like cults. I don't like investment cults. And there's other investment cults out there right now, and there have been in the past. I mean, one big one is cannabis. Like, cannabis investing is a big cult. People are starting cannabis hedge funds and stuff like that. If you want to go back a couple years, there was 3D printing. That was a cult. If you want to go back to 2003, it was security stocks like Taser. Every once in a while, you get these cults popping up. And that's usually where people get hosed. People get totally hosed because they come in late to the party, they buy the top, and then it collapses. And if you look at 3D printing, it's down like 95% from the highs. So I just stay away from this stuff. It's not my style. I'm like I've said a million times, I am a get rich slow kind of person. So I buy value stocks that pay dividends. I buy bonds. I get stuff that pays income, and I get rich super slow. Not to say that I don't do speculative trades from time to time, but that's not how I make my money. And some people just live in that world. I mean, they just love to take lots and lots of risk. I have a decent risk tolerance. It's actually pretty high. I mean, but some people I know just have a heart-stopping risk tolerance. And Bitcoin, you need a heart-stopping risk tolerance because on an average day, it could move up or down 10%, which is insane. So, these cult guys, these Bitcoin cult guys, they said they would never sell, and they just had stupid risk management. And actually, just as a general rule, whenever you see something where people say they will never sell, just run for your life. That actually happened with gold in 2011. Gold in 2011, anybody who was buying gold just said, I'm never going to sell. And yeah, that's what happened. So it went down about 47%. There should be nothing in the world that you would never sell. There is a price for everything. You should be willing to sell any stock, any bond, any asset that you buy. So these Bitcoin guys, they round tripped it. Maybe they bought it at 3,000 and went up to 19,000 and went back to 3,000. Now it's at 10,000. The reason I'm getting interested in it, and first of all, let's talk about what Bitcoin is. So Bitcoin is what they call a cryptocurrency. Well, the dollar is a currency. The euro is a currency. The yen is a currency. Is Bitcoin a currency? And it doesn't really behave a lot like a currency. It behaves more like an asset. A currency is something that is a medium of exchange. It is something you use to buy something else. And that's not really the purpose of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is an asset. People buy Bitcoin either as an investment or speculation, but they don't buy Bitcoin to buy a pizza. Now, that's actually happened in the past. If you go back like 6 or 7 years, one guy wanted to prove that you could use Bitcoin as a currency. And this is back when Bitcoin was trading for pennies. And he used 10,000 Bitcoin to buy a pizza. And if he had just held on to the Bitcoin for 7 years, it would have been worth $168 million. And he used it to buy a pizza. A very famous story. So it's not really a currency. It's more like an asset. It's a very volatile asset that moves 10% a day. By the way, the stock market moves on average about 1% a day, on average. A big move for the stock market is 2%. A huge move for the stock market is 3%. And anything more than that is pandemonium. For Bitcoin, that's just average, like always pandemonium. Bonds move about 0.1% a day or 0.2% a day, depending on the maturity. So bonds really don't move at all. So how do you invest in something that moves around 10% a day? How do you manage risk in something that moves around 10% a day? And I actually don't have the answer to that question. I haven't bought Bitcoin yet. I will soon, but I don't really know what I'm going to do because I'm going to put a fair amount of money into this, and I really don't like the idea of watching it go up or down 10% a day. I don't have that kind of risk tolerance. So I am still figuring that out. Like they say, hang on for dear life. So it's an asset. We'll talk about this when we get back in a second, but what kind of asset is it? I mean, it's not tangible. You can't touch it. It doesn't pay income. It doesn't pay dividends. It doesn't pay a coupon. So what kind of asset is it? Well, really what it is it's lines of computer code that are very, very scarce. And people think that because they're scarce, they're valuable. We'll be back. I'm Jared Dillian. This is The Jared Dillian Show.
Jared Dillian. Own your money. Own your life.